it's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to price your macarons. And if you're not opening up a home-based bakery or a baking business, then I'm really going to be talking to you about why your macarons are so expensive. So let's get into the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is how much it actually costs to make macarons. So unlike cakes and cookies that have fairly simple ingredients, macarons are quite expensive to make. What goes into a macaron? Granulated sugar, icing sugar, egg whites, and most importantly, almond flour or nut flours. Almond flour can run you about $12 to $15 for every 350-ish grams. Now, other nut flours are great alternatives as well, but don't expect them to be any cheaper. I've made some Nutella or Ferrero Rocher versions where I've used hazelnuts, and it's just as expensive, if not more expensive. So right there, you're spending quite a bit of money on just the ingredients alone. Let's also talk about fillings. Now, here is a pro tip. If you are selling your macarons, then you probably want to use higher quality ingredients. Since macarons take such a long time to make, you might as well use the highest quality of ingredients so that you can also charge those premium prices for a good reason. Making something like a chocolate ganache, then I would suggest you use a higher quality chocolate inside. I also really make it a point to use something like fresh fruit when I'm making my compote. I try to avoid things like extracts and flavorings, unless it's something really specific like a cotton candy macaron, in which case I would add something a little bit extra to make it even more worth the person's while to make those macarons and to eat and purchase those macarons. Most fillings also include butter, and butter is insanely expensive where I live. It's anywhere from $4 to even $8 for just one of those 427 gram blocks. Pretty much all macaron fillings are going to use some or a lot of butter. Now that we've covered the ingredients portion of a macaron, let's talk about the tools that you need. Now, this is the minimum that you need in order to get by to make macarons successful in the first place. You need a stand mixer, a French sieve or a fine sieve. This is different than a regular sieve because the holes are a lot smaller, so then that way all of those large almond grounds aren't going to go through this sieve. A food processor if you want to be super picky about it, or if you want to grind your own nut mixtures, a candy thermometer, a pot, which most of us have, but most importantly, you're going to need piping bags, which can range in price. It can go up or it can go down depending on how many piping bags you're buying at once. You'll also need some fancy tips as well if you want to make those fillings nice and fancy, or even if you just want to pipe regular circles, you need to have tips in your piping bags. Even those tipless bags don't work really well to pipe macarons. And then you also need super heavy duty pans. Part of the success of macarons is making sure that your macaron is fully heating through and through. If you try to use a regular cookie sheet, it's not going to work, and bake times are going to be really challenging to determine what is happening. So with that in mind, it costs this amount to just get started making a batch of macarons. That is a huge investment, and it's an investment that your customers more than likely are not making on their own. So that needs to be accounted into the price of your macarons. I also want to talk about how making macarons is no easy feat. It takes a lot to understand all of the intricate processes of making a macaron. Sure, there are quick and easier recipes out there. Recently, I just tried a really quick macaron recipe, but did it yield the best results? Not the best results. My own recipe that I've been using for almost a decade is the one that has yielded the best results. It has the perfect snap, the perfect crunch to it, and also has that nice chewy center. Now, for those of you that may not be macaron connoisseurs, the macaron needs to have a nice shell on top that has a gentle snap when you bite into it. And then the feet here should be nice and thick. Then you also have a nice thick layer of filling, and filling macarons isn't actually as easy of a process as you might think. Filling macarons takes some finesse. You need to be able to put just enough so that it tastes really great, but not too much so that it's all leaking out. So even making the simplest of macaron can be quite challenging, and it is an art. It also takes a lot of temperature control, and it also takes a lot of patience. Setting up your macarons so they get those beautiful feet that we were talking about before, at minimum it takes an hour. The other day I tried to do it at just 30 minutes, and you just don't get that same type of feet and the same type of quality. The taste might be there, but if you're picky like me, you want to have that beautiful look of the macaron. So let's break down pricing and how I used to price my macarons. So for just a base flavor, and I'm talking about a buttercream that relied solely on being flavored by powders. This would be something like a matcha macaron where you just put the matcha powder into the buttercream, or an espresso macaron where you just put espresso powder in there. Those things would be my base price macarons. So all of those macarons are about, I would say, this big. I have a mat that I use that I specifically make sure that all of my macarons are the same size, and I would charge $2 per macaron. And I feel like that is a fairly decent price. Where I am in the stores, they're at least $2 with tax as well. So you are looking at around $2.50 to $2.75 on average. Now, of course, we have to account for the fact that they have storefronts. So of course, their product is going to be a bit more expensive. So as home bakers, you have the luxury of keeping your price just a little bit lower. I've said this before as well, custom orders are where you're going to make your money, or the majority of your money. Of course, do stock orders if that's where your passion lies, but for myself, in order to actually make a profit, doing these custom orders is what helps me. So I did offer different shaped macarons, and these are something that you really have to charge accordingly for. My macarons were even more expensive than my decorated sugar cookies because, as we talked about, sugar cookies have very cheap ingredients. They're also a lot less finicky. Although they can be just as time consuming in terms of the actual piping motion, chances of a macaron getting messed up is a lot more likely than a sugar cookie getting messed up. So what I mean by that is you have to keep the conditions very good when you're making piped macarons. And this brings me to that colored macaron topic. Coloring macarons is a very specific process. It is not as easy as just coloring icings. You have to actually split up all of your macaron batter where it is not mixed together yet, add in your colorings, then incorporate everything and mix it together properly, because macarons will just not color well if you just try to mix it. Because if you've ever made macarons, you know that when you mix your macarons, it loosens the batter and it changes the texture, and all of those things can make you not get feet anymore on your macaron or just mess up the texture completely. So to be really specific with macaron coloring, anytime somebody asked me for a custom color, I would allow them one custom color for 40 macarons minimum. My macaron recipe makes 80 macarons, and the reason that I make such a large batch is because it's so much work and so much rest time. 40 at minimum helped me recoup some of that money from the ingredients and the materials that I needed to use, as well as help pay for my time. Anytime you added on a color, it would be an extra 50 cents per macaron per order. So just to clear that up for you, let's say you say to somebody, the minimum order for macarons is 40 macarons, and they would like 6 colors. That means 6 times 50 cents. So we're looking at $3. That's $3 on top of the $2 you would have spent per macaron. So that's $5 per macaron. Again, I'm just giving you a guide on how to price things and how I priced things out. I'm just going to give you some really concrete examples right here on how I charged for my shaped macarons.
If I were to price these now, these cupcakes are actually quite large, so I would charge around $12 per cupcake macaron. For the macaron laying on its side there with the polka dots, I would charge around $4.50 per macaron if I was specifically asked to make it with those colors. For these Mother's Day bouquets, I would charge $85 per bouquet if that was a stock order. If that was not a stock order, it would probably be even more expensive, probably in the 90s range. Again, these macarons are actually quite large. They're not the size of your typical macaron, and there's also multiple colors and a lot of airbrushing technique used on these macarons. And finally, for these adorable little piggies, these have less color and require a little bit less work, so I would charge $6.50 per macaron. Just for comparison's sake, if these were sugar cookies that had pig faces on them, then I would charge about $5 per cookie.
Here are some things that you need to consider before you start selling your macarons from your home baking business. Are you going to have a lot of macarons on hand? Macarons freeze really well, and they will keep for about 3 months in good quality condition. However, these are the things you need to think about. How much freezer space do you have? How much free time do you have to just spend your days making macarons and building a stockpile of flavors? There are pros to doing it that way. You are able to offer your customers a grab bag of macaron flavors. Usually when people are throwing a party, they would really like to have an array of flavors of macarons. Or if they're just taking home a dessert for their family for the night, having an array of macarons is a lot nicer than just having one flavor. But like I've said in past videos regarding my home baking business, you need to remind yourself that you are a home bakery. You are not a commercial bakery that has tons of freezer space and tons of time to just be making these flavors. That you might not even sell within that 3-month time limit. So you're going to know your customer base the best, so that's something that you do need to consider. For myself, I really stuck to custom orders. The only time I was able to offer an array of macarons is if I decided to double a batch that I was making for somebody else and I ended up storing those leftover macarons. Then I would do things like have little macaron sales at the end of every month, just kind of being like, these are the leftover macarons, you're going to get them at a cheaper price. And I would bring that price down to about $1.75 per macaron just to get them out of there, clear up that freezer space, and then that way I could get set up for the next month. So hopefully that answers some of your questions as to why macarons are so expensive, and I hope it also gives you some insight on how to price your macarons. Please, if you have any questions on pricing, I am all here for it and I will help you out. I am a proud Canadian, but where I live in Canada, things are a little bit more expensive. So you do have to kind of tailor all of your pricing to where you live and kind of figure out what that median price is around your neighborhood and your town. And then you can start using some of my tips to help you figure out your actual price that you're going to be charging for your macarons. Just remember this, if you ever feel like things are a bit too expensive or you're charging too much, think about all of the tools that you've already invested in that the average person wouldn't, and think about your skill. Chances are, if you're even thinking about selling macarons, you already have a lot of knowledge and have already done a lot of research. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys.